Hi, my name is Andrew from Optical Mechanics. Thank you for joining us today. Shortly, we'll be starting a chat with Bernard Miller, an amateur astronomer and astrophotographer, about his journey into this field, how he got started, his journey along the way, and talking in more detail about some of the brilliant images he's created. In particular, we're going to talk about his image of the Sculptor galaxy, NGC 253. This galaxy is about 11 million light years away from us in the constellation Sculptor, and it's brimming with new star formation and young stars. But before we jump into that, can I just ask you to, if you like this interview, please follow, like, or subscribe, depending on the platform you're on. So without further ado, let's welcome Bernard Miller to Optical Mechanics. Bernard, thank you for being with us today. Let me start by asking, how did you get into the world of astronomy?
Well, I don't know, I guess it was about 2007-ish. My youngest son had a astronomy project at school in junior high, and he had to check out a telescope and go find a bunch of stuff in the night sky. And so I helped him with that, and we managed to find the local astronomy club, and we went out to their star party. And my son, he had a great time. People were showing him stuff and, doing a lot better job of helping him than I ever would have been able to do at the time. And, he got an A on the assignment, did real well on it because he found out, they helped him find all, I think there were 10 or 12 objects he had to find. He found all of them and was able to look through not only the telescope we had, but there was maybe a dozen people there. So you got to look through some, better telescopes than the one the school checked us out.
Yep.
And so we had a good time. So I went out and bought a CPC 1100 Celestron. And we did a lot of visual observing at dark sites, outside Phoenix where I live.
Mhm.
And then one day, somebody showed me how to put a camera on mine, and I started putting a DSLR on it and trying to take some pictures. And the first ones, turned out kind of how you'd expect, pretty bad. But I just kept at it, and I don't know, I just did a lot of the groups, just asking questions and stuff and reading and doing what I can. And I went from there and finally got like a Tech 140 and a better mount and started taking, some better pictures. I had a mild camera and it was a nice setup. And I just started from there and I started getting, what do you call it, seminars on image processing. Because once I'd figured out how to take the picture, the other half of the battle was processing, because, two people taking the same data and get vastly different results. So Adam Block and Warren Keller, those are two people that probably taught me a lot of most of what I know. I went to some of their seminars and on PixInsight and Photoshop and CCD Stack and all these tools. And just by, learning, I started to get better and better. And then, I got tired of driving out of town. I mean, I was 45-mile drive, get out of the lights of Phoenix, image until 3 a.m, drive back. And I'm like, I'm going to run myself into a ditch one day trying to do this. You go out there, you set out, you take pictures, you come back. So I found a place in New Mexico, about 4-hour drive from here, that leased space. So I took my down there, set it up, learned how to run it remotely. I was actually at one of the Adam Block's processing tutorials, and a guy that was there, and he had his phone, and he's showing me his observatory, and he's rolling the roof off all of his phone. And I said, "Oh, that's really cool." And so I talked to him, and I went out and spent a weekend in his place, just looking at his setup and taking notes and part numbers. Figured out how to rig up a remote observatory. And in 2010, I went live with my first system, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay. So how long did it take you to get from that first time when you were with your son, 2010 position?
About 3 years.
Right.
It's about 3 years, because it was about 2007, I think. 2007 or 8, so 2 or 3 years before I finally went, first light on my permanent pier in New Mexico.
Yeah,
And now
yeah.
I've been doing that now 15 years down there now since then. But
Okay,
I've been,
okay.
the first 5 or 6 years I had the Tech 140, and then in 2015 or 16 I got the Planeway CDK 17 that I now run, and that's what I've been
Right,
using
yeah.
ever since. And
Okay.
I augment that with data I get from Telescope Live because they have Southern
Yes.
Hemisphere objects, which is actually where I got the data for the Sculptor galaxy. Obviously, from the Northern
Yeah.
Hemisphere, it peaks at about, I don't know, 30 degrees, maybe 28.
Right,
Or,
okay, yeah.
and so, I mean, if I was, the observatory, I can't get that low. I maybe
No.
could get that low. I mean, that's the peak. And so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just not quite high enough for me to really take a picture of with my setup. So that's why I use Telescope Live, because they have telescopes in Chile, and there's a lot of Southern Hemisphere data I've been able to get from them.
Right.
So,
Yeah, cool. So I'm just curious, how does the remote setup work? How do you manage security for it?
well,
Expensive.
it's a ranch, I guess, and it used to be a ranch, and it's just now it's just there's about a
Right.
dozen, if there's maybe a dozen observatories on it. It's like a
Oh,
observatory ranch, and the person lives there. I mean, it's his
okay.
house and front yard and a great big ranch
Mhm.
full of observatories. So there's
Oh, okay.
people there. It's not just in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's in the
Yeah,
middle of
sure.
nowhere, but somebody
Yeah.
lives there on site, so security from that standpoint. And the other thing I tell people is the reality is, it's a 120-pound telescope. And what in
Yeah.
the world is somebody going to do with a telescope, right? Somebody's not going to want to have to charge. Yeah, well, where are they going to sell it? What are they going to do with it, right? It's not like a car or, and it's a pretty niche piece of equipment that, even if they had it, they tried to hawk it for $50.
Yeah, that's
Somebody,
right.
the call counts, right? It looks weird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Whatever, ne'er do well comes in with a huge telescope to sell. So it's not a high ticket item for most, people that would do that to go after. So,
Yeah, sure.
between those two things, I haven't had any trouble.
Okay, okay. And does the guy kind of do they get dirty?
Yeah, they have. I mean, the guy that lives there, he's fairly knowledgeable, but he has like a guy that does a lot of the nitty gritty work. So if something goes
Right,
wrong with
yeah.
my telescope, I have somebody on site that knows what's going on. I also have, I can go down on site. They have these efficiency apartments, so you can go down there and spend the night, work on your equipment
Right.
and stuff. So, if something comes up that's minor, I can usually get it addressed. I go 2, 3, 4 times a year for, what I call well baby checks, just to, you
Yeah.
know, just see how things are going. Make sure, see what the mirror looks like. If it needs cleaning, maybe lube the gears every now and then, stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't need an awful lot of maintenance then.
No, actually, it's pretty automated. Like I said, I go every 2 or 3 months. I'll probably be heading down here pretty soon. The winter months are a little bit cold. I try and make it through the winter without
Yeah.
having to go in there.
Right, yeah.
It gets down to like 25 degrees Fahrenheit now, which a little colder than I want to be out. And it was a very short.
Yeah, yeah.
I live in Phoenix, so 25 is a little unusual for me.
Yeah, sure, sure. Nice. Okay, so what I'll do is I think I've got the image that you've taken and processed. See if I can post that one there, I believe. Share that there. And
Yeah, that's my website. You can go to gallery. There we go.
there you go. So this is the image that you've taken, which is quite spectacular, really, isn't it? I think it's very impressive.
Yeah, there's some good data there.
So this is, was it 11.4 million light years away?
That sounds about right.
So
Sounds
that's,
about it's well, wait a minute, let me see the Sculptor. Yeah, it's got to be more than 2.5 million, right? Because the Andromeda is the closest galaxy, so that sounds about right.
yeah.
Um, It's pretty
But what
big. It
draw
must
you kind of
be
drew
a
you to this?
galaxy because that's a cropped image, but it's not cropped a lot, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
It's not like the galaxy's, small and I cropped it to make it look big. It's a big galaxy, even though it's that far away.
so what drew you to this particular galaxy to spend time on?
It's always been, I mean, I've seen pictures where it's just a great galaxy. There's a lot of detail. It's probably like, it's like the southern M31, it's just a nice spiral galaxy. It's inclined. There's a ton of detail. It's just a beautiful galaxy.
Yeah, yeah. I was kind of really impressed by the fine detail you kind of got in here with
Yeah.
presumably the
Well,
dust cloud or
that's what a 24-inch plane will get you. That's the other advantage of telescope line, and they have a 24-inch plane wide, and they get some good data. I mean, not only is it southern hemisphere, but trust me, right extra 7 inches is pretty cool to work with. But yeah, that's what
yeah,
I mean. This one's just got a ton of detail. Like I said, it's like, I don't know, it's like a southern hemisphere M31. It's a fairly large galaxy. There's a ton of detail, lots of color. It's always been one of my favorite galaxies. So when they named this, I took all the data I could get. I forget. I down below. Can you
yeah. Just scroll down
scroll
a bit
down?
here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can see there. 44 by 5. So what is that? That's 200. That's about 3 hours of luminance, and then 3 hours each of row. But this is a CMOS, so that's a lot of data for CMOS.
right. Yeah, yeah.
And
So, for the people listening, can you explain these figures down here? So you got luminous 44 by 5.
right, that means there's 44 luminance, 44 separate luminance pictures. Each of them are a 5-minute exposure.
Right.
And
Okay.
it's an unbend 1-1 means it's unbend. The digital cameras, there's the native resolution, which for this one, I don't know what it is. It's a bunch. It's small pixel size. It's can't remember what it is. Like 6,000 by 4,000. I can't remember. But unbend means that it's unbend. Now, if you've been at 2x2, the software takes, a 2x2 set of pixels and combines them into one pixel.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this tells you that 44 by 5 is what 220 minutes, which is just 3.5 to 4 hours somewhere in there of just luminance, and then there's similar times. So you're looking at 12 to 15 hours worth of data here between the
Yeah.
luminance, red, the green, and the blue. And again, they're all unbend. So that's what
So
those.
so they're switching into different filters then, or is it just tracked to
Yeah,
different?
yeah, it's a filter wheel. So they'll take luminance and take as much as they need. And then, yeah, for the red, there's a filter wheel that rotates a red filter in front of the camera is monochrome. The camera's black and white. It only records black and white. But by putting a filter in, then you're getting only the red wavelengths or the green wavelengths or the blue wavelengths. And then the luminance is a clear one. And luminance provides a lot of your depth and detail and contrast. And then, the RGB provides the color. So my normal process is to take all of the data in the PixInsight, and I'll use PixInsight to do the calibration and the stacking and generation of the master luminance, master red, master green, and master blue. And I'll take the master luminance and I'll do some processing on that in PixInsight, stuff like blur exterminator. I'll just sharpen it up a bit. You see, what else do I do? Blur exterminator, and then I also use the noise exterminator on it to get to lessen the noise. And I'll create a master luminance and save that. Then I'll take the master RGB and I'll combine it and get a master color, an RGB. And I'll do the same thing.
Yeah.
Sharpen it up. I will stretch it and, boost color and get it where I want. And then once I'm done, in Pits Inside, I have a master luminance and a master RGB. And then I take those over into Photoshop to do the final processing. So I'll take the luminance and the master RGB and combine them in Photoshop and do my final set of processing to come up with this image.
Right.
So,
Okay.
again, depending on I might do a little bit of sharpening in Photoshop. Sometimes I do a high pass filter. Sometimes I won't. It just depends on the image. And then once I get it the way I want it, I combine it with the color image. And, once I have a color image, sometimes not so much for galaxies. Occasionally what I'll do is I will use Star Exterminator to remove the stars and then just work on the galaxy. Sharpen it, boost the color, do things that don't always do great things to your stars. And what I'll do is I'll also take that combined image over to Pits Inside, and I'll remove the stars. But in Pits Inside, there's a setting on the blur or on the Star Exterminator that will create a star image. So you get the starless image and the stars, just the stars.
Okay.
So once I have that, I bring just the stars back in, and when I'm done processing the galaxy, I put the stars back on and combine them, and then so I've got all that sharpening and color and all the stuff done to the galaxy, but the stars are the same star. I haven't done anything to my stars. They're the original. Also, Pits Inside, sometimes I'll do the equivalent of a minimal on the stars. There's ways, to lessen them, to tighten them up, and to reduce their size a little bit, similar to a minimum tool, a minimum filter that you would do in Photoshop. Sometimes on galaxies, I don't do that. I will just do all the processing, and like what I'll do is I'll just mask out the galaxy and I'll work on it. And any stars inside the galaxy that maybe I don't like what they do, I'll go into the mask and just use the black thing to hide the stars, right? So I've sharpened up the galaxy. But if you look at this, there's only a handful of stars, right, that really are going to stick out. So if I do some sharpening and my stars get halos or they don't look right, I can just mask out the individual stars. So a lot of times on galaxies, I don't always do that flow. Now on nebula, I always do that. I remove the stars, do all of my processing, my noise reduction, my sharpening, contrast enhancement, all that stuff I do on just the nebula. And then when I'm done, I take the stars and put them back in.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And how long does this kind of process take for you?
Boy, a good image with good data, it'll take me a couple hours.
Right. Okay.
Challenging data. Man, I've spent 12, 15 hours, doing 3 or 4 fucking different versions of stuff on that app.
Right.
This one probably take that terribly long. The data was good. It was good data.
Right.
All I had to do is bring out what was there. Some images you have to fix stuff that's not great. But this one was pretty good data, so I would say this may be a couple hours.
Okay.
If you include the Pits Insight to get the masters and then Photoshop, maybe 2 to 3 hours combined to get a file running.
Okay.
And usually when I finish, I wait a day or two and go back and look at it and think, do I like that? I might take a stab at it, or I might see something on that second look. It's like, I could have done this better. So I go back and try again. I start in Photoshop from the masters and I do it again. Or sometimes when I'm done, I leave Photoshop open and I hibernate my computer if I close it down. So I have the history. So I'll look at, 2 days later when I go back to it, I might go back in the history and I'll save it as, version 1. Then I'll go back in the history and try some things. And if I, sometimes I look at the second one and yeah, that's no better. Or sometimes I look at the second one and say, oh, no, I like that better. So I say for second birding. So that's kind of a process I go through. So if I get good data in something like this, I'd have to see. This could have been my first bird, and I could have, I could have taken a look at this and said, yeah, no, I like that. I mean, I don't want to brag, but I like this image. It turned out really well. I was happy with it.
No, it's
You
very
know how
nice
it
image.
is, right? Sometimes you get done, you think, wow, that's pretty cool. And the other times you're like, oh, well. But, better than some I've seen, not as good as others, and you just shook it, But this one I really liked. It turned out really.
Oh, God.
So, yeah, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into, excuse me, on my process, but I can go into as much or as little detail as you want to on the flow. I actually have a YouTube site, AZ Starman Astrophotography on YouTube, that kind of goes through.
Oh, cool.
It goes through my flow. It's a complete flow, 51 from start to finish. It's a little dated. I've been thinking about updating it. I've made some changes to my flow since I posted that a while back. So I might go back and revisit it, but it's fairly close to what I do. So if people are interested, you can search for AZ Starman Astrophotography, and there's a 6-part tutorial that I think goes from Pix Insight through the final product.
Oh, excellent.
And you can
if you could send me that link as well, I'll add it into
I'll
the
try
notes
to
after the video. That'd be great.
So it's probably best if you're interested to go there, because there's you can watch, because it's screenshots of Photoshop and I tell you exactly what menus to bring out. And you get a lot of detail. I could describe it here, but how
I think it's pretty. Yeah, you go into the YouTube
much
channel,
better when you're watching it actually happen on the screen.
That'd be great. That'd be brilliant. So the question is your son still interested in astronomy, or?
Actually, he's 30 years old, 31 years old now, and he's kind of interested, but he lives in an apartment. He doesn't really have a place for a big telescope, so he doesn't go out much anymore. So now he never really, took off with it. He kind of left it behind. So he moved on, and I became bankrupt. I joke with people that, I really love to have like a 20-inch plane wave or a 24-inch plane wave, but I'd have to factor in the cost of the divorce. If I wanted to get it. So, it's not cheap to do this hobby, as most people that will know. But, I bought my dream system, and I'm gonna, I've been doing it I've had this system, I think 2016, so 9 years now. And I'll do it until at some point I'm just gonna get to the point where I just, it's a 4-hour drive, and, at some point when I get into my 70s, I may just decide to, just sell it off. And there's a lot of sites for good data, right? And besides, after 10, 15 years, what's left to image, But the only thing I can think of is, trying to bite off some, 20 frame mosaic or something, just year going after some, something like that. But, if you do this thing long enough, if you go to my website, I've got over 150 galaxies in my galaxy portfolio. Probably got just as many narrowband nebulas and, saying, so I've got 300-400 images I've processed. And with Telescope Live, I've got over 20 terabytes of data I hadn't even processed. I'm going to be a memory before I get to all this stuff. Loose for you. At some point I may pack it in, but we'll just have to see. I may get to the point, like I said, about all that I've got left is, with my field of view, there's several objects that, if I turned it into a 10 or 20 frame mosaic, it'd be pretty epic. But, it'd take me a long time to get the data. It'd probably take me more, depending on the object, right? It could take me years just to get the data, because you get the data and then it goes
Yeah.
away. Wait 6 months for it to come back around, and then you get more data. And,
Very
you
good.
know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's just how much data can you get? Because each frame would have to be, I usually do on a mosaic, I do 6 frames versus 6 and 9. 15. So 15 hours per image. That's 150 hours per 10, a 10 frame mosaic. 150 hours, that's a lot with sky top. You got to have a lot of clear nights, a lot of moonless nights, depending on what it is.
So what kind of storage? What kind of storage is required for that? Yeah, a data.
Well, oh boy, a thing like that, each one of my images, I'd have to, let me see if I can go to this, see what the size of the 253 were. Let's see where. That's the other problem. I've got the data across 2 disks. It's got to be too big. I wouldn't shut on one gills. Wow, where'd it go? Oh, I know what it's. Where else? Oh, I put it under Sculptor. I'm looking at 253, and it's actually under Sculptor Galaxy. Yeah. So the Sculptor Galaxy, I do properties. It's 35 gigabytes just for that one picture.
Okay. That one vector
So
35 gigabytes.
That's
Yeah.
that's all the subs plus and PixInsight. I say the project from PixInsight and all the intermediate files and everything. So it's 35 gigabytes. So this one picture takes up 35 gigabytes. Now, like I said, I've got a 20 terabyte drive that's almost full, and I just got another 20 terabyte drive for Christmas that I'm starting to put stuff on. So, like I said, I have a ton of data I haven't even gotten to yet, and it's mostly Telescope Live. It's stuff I can't image, right? For the most part,
Yeah.
some of it I can, some of it I have duplicates. They do have some scopes in the northern hemisphere too, so some of their stuff is duplicates. But I have processed everything I have taken. If I took a picture with mine, I've processed it. I don't have any unprocessed data from my telescope, but from Telescope Live, I had a ton of stuff I just haven't got to. So I'm gonna be doing this for a long time. And like I said, at some point when I just get tired of, dealing with driving 4 hours and sitting out in 20-degree heat or 100-degree heat in an observatory doing maintenance, I may just give it up and start processing, doing YouTube videos, for just trying to help the people, so that they can how to do stuff like that. But I've enjoyed it. I joked with my wife. I told her, I know this is a lot of money, but it's my keep from becoming an alcoholic when I retire plan. So, as that sense, I just love it. It's the beauty, the wonder of what's out there in the universe is just, it's awe-inspiring. It's just, I never get tired of a new galaxy or a new picture. And, I sit back and look at the data and think how far away this thing is and how big it is and the immensity of it. Makes you feel pretty small, and it makes you think. So I just enjoy it, and I'll keep doing it until I do anymore.
Is there anything you've not yet kind of checked out of the image that you want to?
I thought at one time again I'd try some nightscapes, or where you got pictures of the Milky Way, with an interesting object. You go out to a state park and you get some rock formation with the Milky Way. But again, now you're out in the middle of nowhere at 3 a.m, trying to get pictures, and unfortunately I think that ship has sailed. I thought at one time I might get into that, but I don't think I will. The only thing I can think of, like I said, with my telescope is to pick out a half a dozen or a dozen really large objects and think about doing an epic mosaic. You can imagine, you get the Veil Nebula, and I mean, that might be a bit much. That could be 100-panel mosaic. It could take years to do that. But if you think, it would be epic. Weird. I mean, you know, just the you know, it would be unbelievable. Gigapixels. It would just be fantastic image and it'd take a long time. That's kind of all I really have left to do. That and
Right. Yeah.
revisit stuff that occasionally I see something I did in 2017. It's like, oh, I can do a lot better than that. You know, let's do
Yeah.
that one
Yeah.
again, right? Because you
Yeah.
always
Sure.
learn. When you look at something you did 10 years ago, and oh, wow, that's not very good. Let me try that again. So, but that's pretty much it. That and again, my YouTube side, you know, just trying to help other people. I mean, I learned a lot from Adam Block and Warren Keller, and I like to pass it along. You know, we're all on
Mhm.
this together. I got where I got just by like everyone else, right? You go on YouTube or Groups.io, like your site, and you just ask questions and you surf the web, and that's how I learned that and failing. You know,
Yeah.
it's like everyone else. I've spent a lot of hours swearing at my telescope in the dead of night in the desert. Uh, so anything I could do maybe help some people with the learning curve. That's another thing I like.
Well, that's great. That's great. So as we come to close, can you tell us a bit about your telescope?
Oh, my telescope? Yeah, it's a 17-inch plane wave. It's a CDK 17 from plane wave.
Yeah.
And it sits on a Paramount ME mount. And right now I've got an FLI Proline PL 16803 camera on. It's a 16 megapixel 4K by 4K square, and it's got a 10 position filter wheel. Is it 10? It may only be 7. If it's 10, I'm not using all of it. I think it's a 7 position filter wheel, not a 10. But it's got Hell RGB and then three narrowband filters, hydrogen, O3, and S2.
And people can get the data sets for that from your website. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, well, there's two things I do. I'm open to, I sell data sets if people really want it. And also if, on my website, if you sign up for what I think is a minimal fee, you can sign up and whatever pictures I take, you get the data. It's yours to do what you want with.
Yeah.
So if you say, hey, I'd really like a picture of N51, I'll image N51 and you get all the raw data. You'll get the calibration frames and all the lights and everything you need to process it yourself if you want. So those are the two things I do. It's just, like I said, it costs me a little bit of money to rent the site down there. So if people want to jump on board and get some pretty good data, you check my website out and see what I charge. But yeah, you're welcome aboard. You can get the data. I'll even sell you just the raw data, or like I said, you can work with me, and once you're on board, if there's something you want to take a picture of, just let me know, and I'll dial it I'll put it on the stack. We'll take pictures, and you'll get all the data.
Great. Well, I will add that to the notes after the video, and that's great. Thank you. Okay, Ben. Well, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate all that you've talked us through.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, and I'll keep posting, what pictures I do have out there. I'm working on, several right now. I've got a bunch of stuff in the hopper. I'm just waiting for enough clear nights. But I think the last one I took with my setup, I think it was NGC 1931. So that's, if you're familiar with the Spider and the Fly Nebula. Well, the Spider and the Fly Nebula doesn't quite fit. I mean, I could maybe almost get it on, but it just depends on the rotator and stuff. So I took the Fly, and now I'm working on the Spider. So they're two separate images. They're two images. So that's the last one I did. I'm also working on the three galaxies in the Leo trio. Working on those. Hopefully I'll have some data later next month on those three, get those processed. But I appreciate you having me on here, and people have my website. You can always drop me a line. I will try and send you a link to the YouTube site so people can go on if they want some gory detail on my processing.
Please. Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
that brings us to the end of our fascinating discussion with Bernard Miller. Details of the websites, YouTube channels mentioned can be found in the comments section below or via visiting our website at opticalmechanics.com. And also, please remember to like, follow, or subscribe to this channel for future updates. Thanks again, and keep looking to the skies.